Hello everyone, and welcome to Waffle Flower Crafts. It's Shannon here, and in today's video I'll be showing you how to stretch your dies with some partial die cutting. I'll be using these Waffle Flower products today. First up is the homemade Christmas stamp set. I'll be using a sentiment from this set to finish my card off. I'll be creating some pattern paper with this plaid play stamp set, and then I'll be really quickly using the layering wood grain stamp set to also kind of create some pattern paper. I'll be altering this die set. This is the Pop-Up House die set, and I'll also be altering this A2 nested dome die set as well. And then these last two products are the Cold Hands stamp set and Cold Hands matching die. I'm going to start with an A2 panel made from some red cardstock. I'm going to peel off the middle stamp or middle strip and center it here, or get it nice and straight using the help of the grid lines on my work mat. And then once I get it nice and straight, I'm going to pick it up with my acrylic block. I'm going to do some tone-on-tone stamping today, so I picked a red ink. This is the Distress ink. It's called Fired Brick. I'm just going to ink up this stamp here. I'm going to stamp in the middle first, but I'm going to grab some scratch paper because I will kind of stamp off the edge of the panel, and this way the ink will go onto the paper and keep my workspace nice and clean. Like I said earlier, I'm starting at the widest point, and this is because this will help me make sure I get my angle right on this stripe. That way if I have too harsh of an angle on that stripe, especially that first stripe because that dictates the angle on all the rest of them, I won't be able to stamp completely across the width of the panel and have to stamp that stripe twice, and that's really lining that up would be very difficult. So that's why I stamp in the widest point first, just so I make sure I get that angle right on that stripe. So I've stamped that stripe all the way up to the corner, and now I'm going to go all the way up now to this right corner and stamp. So I've completed the panel with this angle of stripe. Now I'm going to rotate the stripe and completely stamp it at a different angle this time, and stamp all the way to the edge of the panel with this angle. Again, I started at the middle or the widest point of the panel, and then I'm using my edge of my acrylic block. That's how I'm lining up every time I stamp. That's how I make sure the width is about the same. So I'm lining up the edge of my acrylic block with the edge of the previously stamped stripe. Now I've taken the smallest stripe stamp from the Plaid Play set, and I'm now stamping it in between the medium stripes. And then I'll rotate the panel around after I've stamped one whole direction, and then I'll stamp the other angle here to kind of make that crisscross pattern, just like I did with the medium stripe earlier. So once I've completed, I have this really pretty plaid, and I'm going to use this as a background. I love creating my own backgrounds. It's the surest way to make sure that my ink colors or all my other colors that I use in the project are going to be the same. So I really enjoyed making some of my own backgrounds lately. I'm now going to use the nested dome die set here. I'm using that second largest die from that die set, and I'm going to start to create my snow globe. I'm going to do some partial die cutting here because I don't want to cut this complete dome out. I actually want to only cut up, I want to stop cutting about 3/4 of an inch away from the edge of the panel. This will kind of create this will create the dome, the little snow globe dome. So I've positioned my top plate of my die cutting machine about 3/4 of an inch away from the edge of the panel. And that means that I will not cut that last 3/4 of an inch of the die. So there you can see it didn't completely cut out that dome, which is exactly what I want. Because if it did, I would end up with just two pieces, this U-shaped dome and the exterior around it, and I just want to have one consistent panel here. I don't want to have to piece together my panel. Now I'm going to completely remove the dome here by using a ruler and an X-Acto knife, I'm just going to cut that space in between the two die cut lines. And that will, by doing that, I'll be able to pop out that center dome. And I'm going to, this is going to be my front panel of my card. I'm going to use this panel now to help me know where to cut for on my craft foam. This is a craft foam panel, and I'm going to just place the plaid panel right on top of it and use a pencil here to trace out that dome. So that's the part of the panel that I want to remove, because that's where my little snow globe scene is going to go. So I'm going to cut this all out. This craft foam basically works like a little wall or barrier to hold all the glitter or sequins in my snow globe or my shaker card, because this is essentially going to be a shaker card. I'm going to now take some gray cardstock. I've already stamped on it with the layering wood grain stamp set, and I stamped it in iced spruce distress oxide. And now I'm going to take that base from the nested domes die set and just die cut right over that wood grain stamped paper. And this is going to create a little pretty like wood grain base for my snow globe. I'm going to go ahead and glue that on right now. This is because I want to know what's going to be visible from the front of the card. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this now, and then I'll use this panel now to help me trace for my back panel. So that my back panel is going to be where I construct my scene. And so there's my back panel right there. It's just made from white cardstock. It's an A2 panel size, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And now I'm going to use this plaid panel to trace what the visible window scene space is going to be. So those are all my construction pieces for the shaker card or snow globe part. Now I'm going to kind of make the interior scene that's in the snow globe. So I've taken the the pop-up house die, and I've already die cut the little house front, and I snipped off with scissors the rest of the house. And now I'm going to create a little roof here. So I'm going to take the same die that I used to create the front of the house, and I'm going to line it up here on some white cardstock, some scrap of white cardstock. I'm not going to align this die all the way to the base of the cardstock. I'm actually stopping that edge of the roof line. I'm stopping about 1/4 inch away from the edge of the paper, and then I'm going to stop about 1/4 inch away from the edge of the roof line with my top plate. So I'm doing some more of that partial die cutting. I don't want to cut this all the way out because it has to be a little bit larger than the house, the front of the house. You can see here, there's the front of the house, and I'm now going to extend that roof line, and that's going to make it larger than the front of the house, so it's going to be a little bit, so you can see the roof. If it's the same size as the front of the house, you won't be able to see it, and it'll look a little strange. So I'm just now extending that roof line all the way to the edge of the paper, and that is going to be my roof. And don't worry about that window. We are going to end up covering that up with a piece of paper between the two, the roof and the front, that we'll use to kind of color to add some light behind the windows. Okay, so here's all my pieces for the house. This is just a door that I cut. I cut this separate because I just want to color that. I'm going to color these pieces in with some alcohol markers. I'll get to that in a little bit, but first up I'm going to address that cardstock behind those windows. Like I was saying earlier, I want that to be colored so it looks like there's a light on in the house. So I'm just using a little scrap of cardstock here, lining my front of my house up with it, traced around it, and then now I'm using some scissors to trim off the excess. And now I'm ready to just double check and make sure it fits in there. I'm ready to color it in. I'm just using a very light yellow marker here just to add a little bit of color, so it just looks like there's a little bit of life inside that house. And now I'm going to start coloring the rest of the house. So I'm going to color the complete front of the house with a very light blue. Once I've got that colored, I'm going to move on to the roof. I'm using kind of a medium gray here for the roof. Just going to color the top portion. That's the only part that you'll see on that roof, so I don't need to color the rest of it. And I'll kind of put together, so I made sure I've colored enough of it. Now I'm going to color this door. Yes, I will be trimming off the rest of it, but I'm just going to color it real quick first with like a dark teal, and then I'm going to use my scissors here to snip off some of that excess, and then I'll cut it right along that score line that allows the door to kind of open and close. Now I'm going to move on to the windows that are at the front of the house. This window has like shutters and paint, a window pane. I'm going to color in the window pane with that dark teal, the same color that I used to color the front door, and I'm going to stop short of the shutters. I'm going to color those a different color in just a second here. This is the arched, this goes on the arched window up by the roof, and I'm just going to color this again with that dark teal. The whole thing is going to be this nice dark teal color, so really easy here. And then the shutters, as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to move back to that front window here, and I'm going to color in those shutters with the gray. This is the gray that I used on the roof, so same colors here. And just going to color in the remaining portion of this window with that gray. So that now the shutters are nice little gray. So now I'm ready to put this all together. I'm going to take the front of the house and add some glue to the back of that, and I'm going to glue that to that center panel or center section that has a little bit of yellow colored on it, and then I'm going to glue the roof to the back of that, and that'll be basically my house. And now I just have to embellish with the door and window. So I'm just going to center it here, and once I get it all centered, I'm ready to kind of glue on these last little pieces. I'm going to glue this door right here, right to the front, and then I will adhere the arched window directly over that arched window die cut, and then finish up with that final front window. So very simple to do. I like using my alcohol markers here to kind of add some little bit more details. It really steps up the die even more. You know, it's a really beautiful die set, but just this little bit more of detail just really enhances it. So that house is completed. Now I just have a couple more kind of greenery embellishment things to do. I've got the wreath and the bow from the pop-up house and the tree from the Cold Hands. I went ahead and colored some scrap white cardstock with my alcohol markers, and then I went ahead and die cut. This was just easier to do because the wreath and the bow were smaller, and I didn't have to fiddle with trying to die. I could have done this too for especially that arched window. That would have been made that a little bit easier as well, to have colored it first and then die cut. When you do this though, just make sure your paper is dry before you die cut it, because the liquid in the alcohol markers makes the paper wet, and when you die cut over that wet paper, the paper really sticks inside your die and it's really hard to remove. So just make sure you dry your paper really well. Just use your heat gun real quick and dry it so there's no liquid, no moisture in your paper when you die cut. Now I'm just taking the coordinating stamp that goes with that Cold Hands tree and stamping it in Lucky Clover Distress Oxide. Now I'm going to move on to back to that panel that we traced the dome on a while ago, and I'm going to start to kind of construct the scene here. I've got some dye ink. This is Waffle Flower's New Fish and Pond, and I'm going to I just freehand cutted like a little stencil sort of. It's like a mountain scene, and I'm just going to use that, just hold it down. I'm not going to tape it or anything, and then ink blend at the edge of it to kind of look the appearance of like a mountain or hills. Now I'm going to, you saw me trace it really quickly, freehand trace it, and then I'm going to cut that trace line. This one's going to be a little less dippy and extreme as the back mountain. And then just erase my trace line that I made with pencil. And then I'm going to cut off some of the excess. I don't need it to be as big as it is. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to do some ink blending right on the edge of the mountains or hills with the New Fish and Pond and an ink blending tool. Now that I've got all my pieces done to construct my scene, I'm going to kind of put it together. I did it off camera, but I did cut 2 more of those little trees, cut 2 more and stamp 2 more of those trees, the exact same tree that I did earlier. I just extended the baseline because the baseline of the dome, because I couldn't see it, my little winter scene was covering it up. I just want to be aware of where the edge of the base of the dome is, so I know what's going to be seen on the front of the card. So I've just kind of reconstructed my scene here a little bit in my MISTI, so I know where to position my sentiment. This is actually the plaid front. I didn't glue it down, I just temporarily put it over the back panel so I can see exactly where the edge of the dome is, and I can center my sentiment accordingly. So now that I've got my sentiment stamped, I did use Candied Apple Distress Oxide to stamp that sentiment. I'm going to remove all these pieces that I just used temporarily, put them in place to kind of help position, and I heat set the sentiment. Because it's that Distress Oxide, I don't want it to be, it takes longer to dry, and I don't want to accidentally smudge it here while I'm kind of constructing my scene. So I recreated my scene one more time just so I knew where I wanted to glue everything, and now I'm going to start to glue everything down. So just going to glue down that front snow mountain hill section, and then I'm going to tuck one of the trees behind it. I did put some glue on the back of that. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the house in kind of down, and that'll help me know where I'm going to put that tree. Again, using that front panel to just make sure everything's centered and I like the position everything is in. And then I'm glued the house down, and then I'll glue down that last tree. So pretty simple little scene, but looks so sweet in this little snow globe. I really like using this pop-up house die a little differently, and just using the front of it. I just think it's a good way to stretch that die even more. Okay, so now I'm ready to, this is the craft foam, or the white craft foam that I cut earlier. I'm going to now adhere that to the back panel. I'm using some Tombow Mono multi-liquid adhesive here. This is a really good adhesive for craft foam. It works really well. I'm going to just kind of glue around the edges and then pop down that craft foam layer. And again, this is going to create kind of like a little wall to hold in all the glitter and stuff for my shaker card. And just double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking here that everything's lined up and everything is hidden behind that front panel. So this is a sheet of acetate here, and I'm going to now finally adhere this acetate to the back of the front panel. It's a little large. It's extending just a little bit past it. It's exactly 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, this piece of acetate, but I'm going to trim it down just a little bit so I don't have to worry about it sticking out past the front panel at all. And again, I'm going to use more of that Tombow Mono liquid adhesive. This is a really great adhesive for multi-surfaces, so that's why it's also good for this acetate as well. And I'm just going to stick that down, and then I'm going to put that aside for a second and fill in my shaker card. So I just have some, basically it's clear glitter, just really cheap clear glitter. I'm going to put a fair amount of it in here to really kind of look like snow, and it has a nice sparkle. Just really simple. I don't want to take away, I don't want anything too colorful or too large, because I don't want to take away from the little scene. There's a lot going on in this little scene inside. I'm going to use some more of my adhesive here now that I've got my shaker card filled up, and now I'm going to take the top or the front panel with the acetate and just adhere it right down there, just like so. And then I'm going to put something weighted. This is just the platform of my die cutting machine, and let it sit with that weight on it for a little while. So it's sat already, and I'm nice and dry, and I'm ready to kind of add this front panel to my card base. So this is my card base. You can't really see here, I didn't hold it up, but it does have a fold, and it's just made out of red cardstock. I just added some liquid adhesive to the back of that front panel. I'm going to kind of center it here and press it to give it a good press, and it is all done. So you can see I used the partial die cutting to kind of change that nested domes die to create a little snow globe, and also some partial die cutting to kind of create that roof for that little house from the pop-up house die set. I hope you guys enjoyed my card today. If you wanted more information on the products I use, please visit waffleflower.com, and you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.